Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker today. It's Mr. David Hope, and he will be speaking on the title, It Comes from the Heart.
Thank you, Mr. Witt. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always good to talk about the weather when you get started. In Oklahoma, it's a little different today. Some people would say it's a little sultry, but really it's sandy. If you're in other parts of the world, you may not realize that we're getting part of the Sahara Desert coming up and I understand it's supposed to be a little worse tomorrow. We were driving down the road, and my wife made a comment about that, and I said, yeah, you can see the sand all over the road. And I said, or is that from the big snow we had, the sand and all that? Well, we didn't have a big snow this year, so I can't say that. But anyway, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. Did I hear right that we're not going to be able to be on the internet today? We're not on? We are on. Oh, good. Hi, everyone. Glad everybody is here. If you've been here in the Tulsa church for any length of time, or if you've been tuning in to our internet services, you'll probably notice in the past year or so there have been an awful lot of messages, or several messages anyway, concerning warnings to our people and talking about repentance and God's great mercy, for people to repent and His forgiveness. So, we've talked about that a lot. And many people throughout the world, during the pandemic and other catastrophes have begun to look at themselves, like they did 9/11 and other times, and hopefully they'll continue to do it, and hopefully we will continue to do it. But many people are looking at themselves, have for a long time, but they find it very difficult to overcome. Have you ever gotten that way? A lot of us have a problem sometimes with maybe a nagging problem, a nagging sin that we really would like to overcome. I've been there. I'm sure some of you have been. Most of you have been. But even many Christians have the same problem. Many people are discouraged because it just keeps coming back, and I'll get into some other stuff. But today, I want to show that a big clue, not the only thing, but a big clue to overcoming or not overcoming has to do with the mind. A lot of it has to do up here. A few years ago, I had the opportunity, and I may have, does this light bother anybody? I don't think I need it. I had an opportunity to go to a graduation ceremony of one of my grandchildren out in California. We had 3 of them that we went out, and we rode our motorcycles out. But anyway, they have a custom there at this one school that the grandkids went to. It's similar to our baccalaureate services, a few days before the graduation, and they call it sob night, and where friends, relatives, or someone else, will get up and have a microphone and speak to the students on stage, and I think there were about 100 students or something like that, and even the audience were here, and since I knew several of the kids because of my grandchildren, and I even went to some of the parties. I even was the sheriff one night at the graduation party, and so they called me Grandpa Hope. But anyway, I had an opportunity to get up and to speak a little bit, and I didn't use any biblical scriptures, but it was a biblical example, something that you could find in the Bible. And it's something, I may have mentioned it here before, and I know a lot of you have heard it too. You probably have seen it on the internet and some other things. But the story that it is about the 2 wolves. And a lot of you, have any of y'all heard that? I'm sure you have. Yeah, see some. But it was a perfect example for being out in that part of the country, because they think that we Okies are still driving wagon trains, and stuff like that, and everybody carries a 6-shooter. And I said, back in Oklahoma, there's an old Indian expression, an old Indian story, and it says that there's an old Indian grandpa and his grandson, and the grandson was fixing to graduate, and the grandpa in then said, sorry, Lucille, Grandma in then could have said it too, because I've heard Grandma say some things we share grandchildren, her son and our daughter was married, and so we share grandchildren. And I've heard things that Grandma Lucille has said, and she's very thought of too, well thought of. But anyway, the old grandpa said, well, inside of every person there's two wolves. One wolf is mean and evil and wicked and hateful and vengeful and despiteful, and mentioned all these horrible, horrible things. He said, and then the other wolf inside each of us is a good and a kind and a loving and a gentle and, all the good qualities, meekness and all of that. And they're fighting, trying to take control, try to see who can get the betterment. And a little Indian said, Grandpa, which one wins? And I think most of you have heard that. The one you feed. The animal that you feed. And I thought it was a very good example of a Christian principle anyway. And that kind of leads into just a few scriptures I have. I'm not going to have a lot of them. But the first one that we'll turn to will be Matthew 12 chapter. Matthew 12 and verse 34 through 37. Very familiar. And breaking into a thought again, Jesus said, O generation of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart speak the mouth. So whatever comes out, you can listen to a salesperson, listen to an ex-con or somebody else, not that they're the same, but you can listen to them, and sooner or later, you just by their terminology, the things they say, and the attitude, you can tell what's within them. It says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account of in the day of judgment. For by your words shall you be justified, and by your words shall you be condemned. And the idle word is not necessarily the crust of anything, but it just kind of reminds me, I've had a couple examples that I'm really trying to be more aware of what I say jokingly. A lot of times I'll say things jokingly. And one of the things was a few years ago when Barnabas and Carolyn Grayson were still living in Eufaula, and they invited us down one weekend after services, and we went down to their house and had a beautiful house, a beautiful driveway. It wasn't a straight driveway, it was kind of curvy like that, and beautifully shaded, and little trees and stuff all around. And on Sunday, around noon, I think we were going to go out to eat or something or other, but anyway, I was driving, Barnabas was driving shotgun, and the women were in the back, and I was driving along here backing out, and Carolyn said, David, you might want to be careful because of those trees out here, they're real tricky. And my idle word was, oh, this is Fran's car, it don't matter. And all of a sudden, boy, I came to a stop. I mean, just sudden stop. And there was a little tree right beside the driver's side back door. You couldn't get the door open, it kind of caved it in. Fortunately, it didn't do a lot of damage, but, idle word, oh, well, it's Fran's car, And another time years ago, and I was about 13 years old, and I was out in my front yard fixing to go to town, and a couple of boys, 2 or 3 years older than me, I was 13, I think, at the time, and they come driving down the road, and this was a dividing line of city limits and out of city limits, and we didn't have any blacktop roads or anything, or paved roads other than Main Street in this town, Oilton, I lived in at that time. These guys came by in this old Chevy pickup, loud pipes. It didn't have a pipe under, just had just a pipe, no muffler, and driving reckless and everything, and boy, hooping and hollering. And I made a comment, I hope you have a wreck. It wasn't, 20 seconds later, and I heard this awful bang. And down the street, like I said, this was the dividing line of city limits out of Sandy, and it was sandy, all sandy. I heard this, and I knew what it was. It was probably a wreck, so I ran down there real quick. My grandfather had lived up over the hill, about a quarter of a mile down there, and he was coming down in his pickup, fixing to go pump wells. He was a pumper for Watt Henry, and dust was going everywhere. The boys' pickup was turned upside down on my grandpa's pickup. I thought, what have you done? I thought I cursed him, I mean, I didn't, but, anyway, the boys got injured somewhat. They didn't have to go to the hospital, but they did have to have stitches, and my grandpa was okay. But, idle words, we can say some idle words, and I don't know sometimes where God holds us against it or not, but every once in a while when I use an idle word, I think of that. Now, that's not the main crutch of what I was saying, but it is one of the things I'm trying to work on. Is I don't do very good at it. But anyway, another scripture, Matthew 15, verse 17 through 20. Jesus talking again, and just coming into the middle of the thought. He was questioned by the Pharisees and others. Why do your disciples not wash their hands and go by the customs that we do? And I'm not going to take time to go into all of that. But to break into Matthew 15, verse 17, do not you yet understand that whatsoever enters into the mouth goes into the belly and is cast out into the drought? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart. They come from inside you, and they defile the man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, blasphemies, all these things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands defiles not the man. So we're just kind of getting into that. A lot of the bad things that we do and think and actions that we have, things that we say, come from inside us. They don't come from somebody else unless we repeat it, but they come from in the heart. And we learn from scriptures that it really does help to prepare our heart. There are ways that we can make the heart better. And there are just a few scriptures I'm going to use. First one is Proverbs 4. Make sure I quoted the right thing to give to our sound people. Verse 23 through 27. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. So anything that we do, say, think, and come from the issues of life come from our heart. Put away from you a forward mouth, and perverse lips put far from you. Let your eyes look straight on, and let your eyelids look straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet. Think about, what am I doing? Where is this going to lead? What are the consequences? What are the blessings if I continue to do this or if I don't do that? Ponder the path of your feet, and let all your ways be established. And I could even say, just like, I don't have it written down, but, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, when they were commanded to eat the king's food, unclean foods, they had determined in their mind way ahead of time, we're not going to do this. We are determined whether we end up in death or not. And same way when they were to bow down to the image. They prepared their mind. They determined their mind ahead of time. And we can do the same thing. We can prepare our mind that we will not go a certain direction, that we will not go any further than this. Verse 27, turn not to the right hand nor the left. Remove your foot from evil. So we need to do some actions. Proverbs 23, 6 and 7. Eat you not the bread of him that has an evil eye, neither desire you his dainty meats, or his lifestyle, his yacht, his Harley Davidson or something. Don't desire his fabulous things. For as he thinks in his heart, so is he. He eats and drinks and says to you, but his heart is not with you. In Proverbs 23:17. Let not your heart envy sinners, similar to the other verse, but be you in the fear of the Lord all the day long. So we need to, all day long, you and me both. Verse 19, I'm skipping 18. Hear you, my son, and be wise, and guide your heart in the way. Guide your heart. We can do that. We have the scriptures. We have the wisdom. Sometimes we struggle. You know, sometimes you struggle, I struggle, and still have difficulty overcome. You know, some problems we have, you know, we may end up using prayer all of our life, trying to overcome them, but we're not alone. You know, none of us are alone, even though we think that, you know, how could God love me because of the life I am, the thoughts I have, or the problems I just seem to can't get over, can't shake. We're not alone because the Apostle Paul described the same thing. Of course, fortunately, he didn't mention exactly which one it is. We might get self-right and say, well, I don't have that problem, you know. And but Romans 7, verse 18 through 25. Verse 18, for I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good thing. Sometimes we think that. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not. How many times have we said, man, I slipped again. And if you have a mate, they know about it. And maybe not everything, but, you know, we're still struggling. A lot of times we're still struggling. For the good that I would do, I do not. You know, I just can't quite go that far. But the evil which I would not, you know, I hate it. I hate this attitude. I hate this whatever it is, this thought. I hate it, but you know, it's still there, and I still get angry, or whatever the problem is. You know, I don't want to get anything real serious. You know what your problem is, and I know what mine is. What mine are, not is. Now, verse 20. Now, if I do that, I would not, or what I wouldn't do, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwells in me. So Paul's kind of making it a little easier to fathom if we're still having a problem. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present with me. For when I delight in the law of God after the inward man, but I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity of the law of sin, which is in my members. So there are so many things, and some sins are a lot harder to do than others. Some people don't have those, and I made mention here some time ago at one of the Feast of Tabernacles, and I used a situation because I felt people were judging a particular person pretty harshly because they were sick and they were, you know, in the hospital, and a big cause of it was from smoking, from nicotine and all that. And some people had never done that, never had that, and they just couldn't. And I've talked to some of them, and some of them just could not realize, how can somebody be so weak? You know that's wrong. You know it's bad. How can somebody do that? You know, they just must not be a very good Christian, and they're still coming to church. You know, how can somebody be that way? You know, very self-righteous. And anyway, I heard some of that, and it's not my job to correct anybody, but, you know, since it was kind of prevalent, a lot of people knew, I brought up a situation that some of us had, people in the church, and I didn't mention any names other than myself. But when I was younger, I had a problem like that. I had some other problems too, but that was probably one of the harder problems I had, was giving up nicotine. And people say, and I've heard people say over the years, well, God took that away from me when I come into church or when I was baptized, it just took it away. And I believe it did. Some people that happened. I know people personally that walked away from it, didn't have. Same way with alcohol, same way with drugs. I've seen people that God healed them, Jesus healed them, but sometimes he doesn't do that. And other people get, very indignant and self-righteous because of that. And but I think one reason, I can't excuse it. I'm just saying it was a hard thing to do, a hard thing to overcome. But I started on tobacco products when I was 11 years old. And a friend of mine that had moved into town, and they stayed there for about a year or so, and we were buddies. We were 11 year old, and you know how boys are. Did you ever see the show Stand By Me, where a lot of these young teenagers, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, I guess. But anyway, I kind of identified with some of them, and I thought, well, that's old Benny, and this is me, that's Valton, and this is another guy, But anyway, this guy, and I won't mention his name because he's still alive yet. A lot of my friends are dead now, but anyway, this guy is still alive, and I talked with him not long ago. And he got me started on chewing tobacco, on a plug a day's work. And we were trying to push my mother's Studebaker out of a ditch that we had taken out without her permission, and it got in a ditch, and trying to push that old 50 model Studebaker out of a ditch, and the thing spinning, everything, but anyway, and I thought, I'll never do that again. Well, I hung around him long enough that, I got hooked on it. And I realized after a while that it was really hard to get rid of that. And I had a paper route at the time, and I had the whole north end of Oilton from Main Street all the way to not the county line, but the city limits. My brother had the south part of town all the way to city limits, and I was, like I said, 11 years old, and I was a businessman. But anyway, we had Tulsa Tribune 6 days a week, and the Tulsa World on Sunday morning. And I'd get up about 2 o'clock in the morning and go not throw papers, but stick them in the doors of everybody's house. And I'd get heartburn, from chewing that tobacco. And I would throw a whole package of beech nut away, that string tobacco, throw it away because I thought, man, I can't do this anymore. This stuff is killing me. And then after going to Sunday school, about 11 o'clock, I would start backtracking all over the place and trying to find that package of beech nut. So I realized then that this has got a hold of me. And I realized that, when I got older, 15, 16 years old, and girls started looking good, that girls didn't like guys that chewed tobacco. So some of the friends I had there in New Mexico smoked. And anyway, but I transferred smoking to that. And in the early 20s, I tried to get off of both of them. And it was hard. I mean, very, very, very hard to do. That's probably physically one of the hardest things I've ever done. But anyway, a lot of people don't have that problem. But finally, over years, it was kind of a trial and error, and once in a great while, just the thought would come by, boy, a cigarette would get good, and even in recent years, somebody would have a can of Copenhagen or a Skull or something, and I loved that. I liked the Copenhagen more than I did cigarettes and cigars, because you put that in here, and boy, I mean, it's just right in here. Here's relaxation. This is better than a tranquilizer for me. And I could still enjoy that. I don't think it would make me sick, but I know from experience, and I prepared my mind. I put this in my mind, and I thought about it, and I thought, any time I give just an inkling of a thought that I might do that, I will do it. Just an inkling of a thought. And in the same way with a lot of sins. A lot of people have other horrible, horrible sins. And if they give it just an inkling of a thought, you will do it. If you don't set in your mind, I set in my mind, this will never happen. I ain't going to do that no more because I know what the repercussion is going to be. So anyway, but I thank God that, not that he healed me of it, but at least he gives me the strength to stay off of it, and I've been off, for quite a while. And I have compassion on anybody that has that. And that's one reason that I hesitated to get onto some of the other drugs, and I don't know how addictive marijuana and some of the other stuff is. I know pain pills are very addictive. And I don't need another hunger, another habit, another something I have to have. And you're the same way. I know a lot of you are the same way. Anyway, what is that the scripture that I quit on? Okay. Next one, I guess, is, you have to forgive me, I digress and I forget too. 23. Did I read 23? Okay. 24. Oh, wretched man that I am, and oh, senile that I am. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, with the mind, I myself serve the law of God. We may be failing at something, and I still have problems. I know some of you have problems. I don't know that you do. I'm assuming because I'm average, and the Scripture says it all. But anyway, But with the mind we serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of sin. We're still in the body, and we're always going to have some problems. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3 through 5. Paul talking again. For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. So God is a lot more willing to do stuff than what I have given him credit for. Casting down imaginations, all the thoughts and whatever it is, even I know a lot of people in some of the Christian churches will even get involved. It's amazing what percentage of some of even the pastors are involved in pornography and other things, and gambling, and have horrible problems. Casting down imaginations, the fantasies, the good thoughts about it, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And here's a fabulous key: and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. Anything that we have in our mind, if it comes up and it's against the right way, against God, against the commandments, against what Jesus said, even like Jesus said, even he that looks upon a woman to lust after them, he's committed sin already. So Jesus knew just the thought, just thinking about something will lead to horrible things. Bring into captivity every thought that we have. Okay. I'm saying, I even had a note here, don't even give sin an instant in your mind. Don't give sin even a thought. Don't even allow that to come into your mind at all. Even a slight positive thought of the sin can be dangerous. Even thinking a little bit about this could be different in my situation. This could be okay. We cannot do that. We've got to prepare our mind, because it's a very dangerous thing to allow. Psychology shows that people are more apt to change due to rewards. So here's another little key. People are afraid. A lot of people would try to quit smoking or nicotine or alcohol or pain pills or whatever they're doing. People would try to do that because of the consequences that would come up. Well, I'm going to get cancer, I'm going to get POD, or I'm going to have a wreck when I'm driving drunk, or whatever the situation is. And people will have a tendency of the consequences, but people are more successful with achieving their goals by thinking about the rewards rather than the punishment. And a person, and I know people that claim that they got rid of some of the stuff, said, because I want to see my grandkids graduate. I want to see my youngest child's baby grow up or whatever, you know. And instead of having the negative consequences, well, I might die, that in itself is some benefit, but it's more beneficial to focus on the benefits, the joy. You know, we can, instead of thinking, if you're a Protestant or something, instead of thinking, oh, well, if I do this, I'm going to go to hell and I'm going to burn. Well, a lot of people don't want to burn. They don't want to go there. They don't want that to happen. But, you know, people are more successful in overcoming and giving their heart to the Lord. And I'm not making fun of it, you know, becoming converted. People are more successful in that by looking at the benefits when they understand, oh, man, this is going to be great. There's going to be, if I just give up this way of life, I've got, you know, my life is going to be better here. My children are going to be better. My family's going to be better. And to top that off, I'm going to have thousands and millions of years to live. All the things that I wanted to do in this life, I will be able to do it in the next life. There are a lot of things I'd like to do, but you know, I don't have the time, I don't have the skill. But I'm looking forward to the wonderful things that I can do in the future. You know, even after we get past the millennium, the 1,000 years, it's just such an awesome thing. That motivates me a lot more than, of course, I believe that, you know, I'm not going to go to hell and burn, but I do believe if I just refuse God and His way, you know, I'm going to be ashes. I'm going to be nothing. I'm just going to be like turning that light off and on, you know. There ain't no more. There's not any more. But, you know, we have a wonderful, wonderful future ahead of us, and it's worth striving for. So when temptation really kicks in, and sometimes it does, think of the great reward and don't give up. Don't give up. The God of peace will be with you and help you.